After 9 months of genocidal violence under the pretext of trying to eliminate Hamas, now you have Israeli officials who are saying that Hamas is actually an ideology and therefore cannot be eliminated. But it isn't true. It's not true that you can't eliminate Hamas. Of course you can. Of course Hamas can be eliminated. And in fact, it's quite straightforward. It's very straightforward how to eliminate Hamas, and everyone knows it. When they talk about how it is not practically feasible to eliminate Hamas, the part that they're not saying is that it is not feasible to eliminate Hamas while maintaining the occupation, because ending the occupation would end Hamas. It's incredibly simple. It's very straightforward. If you want to end resistance against occupation, end the occupation. This is not a complicated puzzle. You have no legal right to occupy, and they have every legal right to resist occupation. You have to be indoctrinated to the point of idiocy to not be able to see what's supposed to happen, what the solution is. That's the same goes for Hezbollah, the same goes for the Houthi strikes in the Red Sea. You are literally threatening and you're literally fighting illegally against those who are fighting legally. And if you want those who are fighting legally to stop fighting, well, then it's exactly the same as wanting the police to not come after you. Stop committing crimes. You know, when someone tries to make something that is very simple, very complicated, they're just trying to mislead you. And the same goes in the opposite side. There are some things that are complicated, and if someone tries to make them seem simple, then they're also trying to mislead you. In both instances, they're being dishonest. In the first case, they don't want you to see the obvious, because it's against their agenda for you to understand the obvious. And in the second case, they only want you to see what is obvious without explaining what might not be obvious. This is why you can't exclusively be passive in receiving information. You have to at least participate in the processing of the information you receive, because there are people who will not just be trying to give you something to think about. They're trying to give you what to think. And when it comes to the West, when information is coming from the West, so-called information, that's pretty much all they do. They want to dictate what everyone thinks. They don't want you to think for yourself, because if you do think for yourself, 9 times out of 10, your conclusions will not be the ones that they want you to have. So like in the case of Gaza, and in the case of Hamas, they simply cannot be honest. And they're having a very hard time getting the lies to be believed anymore. So they have to reframe, and they have to confuse, and they have to obfuscate, and they have to misdirect. And so you have to understand. You have to use your own intelligence to decipher what they're really saying. And when they say, for example, that Hamas cannot be eliminated, what they mean is, we're not going to give up occupation and genocide. That's what they're really saying. So you can also understand, for instance, why nonviolent student protesters are labeled as Hamas supporters, because resistance and opposition to occupation makes you Hamas in their framing. Because they have to frame it in a way that makes their crimes moral and that makes morality criminal. They have to frame it in a way that makes lawlessness legal and lawfulness illegal, which means by extension, support for international law makes you Hamas. Being pro-peace and anti-genocide makes you Hamas. If you uphold the rule of law, then you're Hamas. And basically the only way to not be Hamas is to be a war criminal who supports genocide. And this is the enlightened West. You know, it's no wonder that they have the highest rate of mental and psychological disorders on earth, because that society is absolutely sadistic towards the mental health of their own people, towards the collective cognition of their own people. You have the villain role in the story of the world, but you see yourself as the hero. You know, a real hero does what is justified, while what you do is justify whatever you want to do. And this contradiction is making everyone in your society sick. I mean, in the richest country on earth, you can't find a person who doesn't believe and who doesn't feel that they're suffering from some sort of trauma. And I believe they are traumatized. How could they not be traumatized? But it's not because of some childhood bully or some toxic relationship or what have you. No. They want you to misidentify the source of your trauma as being one of these very mundane, you know, common unpleasantries of life that everyone deals with, so that you won't actually identify the fact that you are traumatized by your whole so-called civilization. That's what's toxic. Your so-called civilization is toxic. You know, You're gaslit, you're lied to, you're misled, you're miseducated, indoctrinated, and intellectually subjugated with shameless and relentless ferocity, morning, noon, and night. Sickness is health. Health is sickness. Conformity is freedom. Oligarchy is democracy. Despotism is justice. On and on. Your moral compass is a pinwheel where true north is Netflix and chill. Or whatever. Whatever will help numb your conscience from the contradictions and the hypocrisy and the degeneracy and the emptiness of your life. Because meaning and purpose and value have been robbed from you by your so-called civilization. Because you can barely find anything that you were taught to believe that your country stands for that isn't the complete opposite of what your country actually does. But yeah, pay a therapist, pay a therapist so they can make you think that the one who's sick is you and not your society. Therapists are the power structure's first line of defense against revolution. The source of your problem isn't in you, it's all around you. And that's why they want to keep you navel-gazing. That's why American propaganda is failing all around the world, but somehow still works in the United States. Why everyone globally understands what's happening in Gaza and who the criminals are, but in the United States, people can deny the most obvious and the most heinous crimes against humanity and still show their face in public. They can still have careers, they can still hold office and sell record albums and movie tickets. I'm telling you, being pro-Palestinian is the prerequisite for your mental health, for your psychological healing. It's the first step to salvaging your conscience. But being pro-Zionist, pro-genocide, well, I don't think there's any way that you can come back from that. I mean, if you can actually stand there and be okay with the wanton mass murder of 40,000 innocent people, well, you've committed yourself to villainy. You basically hit rock bottom morally and then started digging. And mark my words, that's going to turn into a sinkhole that's going to swallow up your whole society.